All right, great. We have a great turnout today. Andrew, how are you doing? Are we about ready? Can everyone hear me okay? Let's do that test first. I see some nods. Speak up a little bit. Is that good?
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, thumbs up. Thank you. Great. All right. Well, I see 37 folks on the phone or in the room, the virtual room right now. That is great. And if anyone joins later, they're always welcome. But I think we are going to get started for today. So thank you all so much for being here today. This is a great turnout. This is the kickoff meeting for the new Yuba Forest Network. And we have met with some of you about this project over the past few months. So hello again to those familiar faces. And to those we haven't met with yet, hello to you too. We are looking forward to hopefully someday meeting with you in person, but we'll see how that goes in this crazy world, right? So to start off, I'll introduce myself and our team here, and we'll run through a few housekeeping pieces because that's what we got to do in this virtual world. And then we'll get started with today's meeting. So my name is Allison Thompson. I am one of 2 Forest Health Watershed coordinators at the South Yuba River Citizens League. And Andrew Salmon is here as well. I'll let him introduce himself real quick. He should be able to find his face in that grid of videos there.
Good morning, Andrew Salmon with Circle as well. I'm Allison's fellow watershed coordinator, as well as the Forest Conservation Program Manager here at Circle.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so just a really quick background, and then we'll get on to more info later. But first off, we were hired under a Department of Conservation grant last fall to support a number of large-scale forest health planning and implementation projects. One of our tasks under that grant is to build and facilitate a new watershed-wide stakeholder group that promotes and implements forest health and forest projects throughout the Yuba watershed. And so that is why we're here today, to launch what we're calling the Yuba Forest Network, which is really aimed at connecting resources and forest health practitioners like all of you across the watershed, with the ultimate goal of supporting current projects and also developing future cross-boundary forest health projects. And I'll sidetrack real briefly and say, I'm sure many of you know, but just so we're on the same page, by forest health, we mean a variety of different project types and goals. Anything from, say, thinning and fuels reduction to improving roads and wildlife habitat. And as all you all know, the list goes on and on. But we're focused on anything that contributes to a healthy, thriving, resilient forest ecosystem. So in our effort to connect resources, share information, and ultimately develop more successful projects, our kickoff meeting today is going to focus on 2 things. First, we'll introduce the project a bit further beyond what I've said so far, and we'll share the results of the needs assessment that we sent out and many of you filled out back in May. And then second, we will do what we can in this virtual setting to encourage networking and connecting with your peers. And then just to wrap up, our goal at the end is to have a better idea of where this group is headed and establish some concrete next steps moving forward. So now that you know just a little bit about Andrew and myself and our project here, I'd like to get started with introductions from everyone else here in the virtual room. So since we are in this virtual setting and for the sake of time, I'll ask everyone on the call to please introduce yourself in the chat box. Go ahead, type your name, the group you represent, and answer one question for us. And today's question is a fun one, is what is your favorite tree and why? And I know it's hard to decide. I have many favorite trees, but if you could pick only one. And then is there anyone who is called in on the phone who doesn't have chat box access? You can go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself if you're here on the phone.
Yeah, this is Eric Sweet. I'm on the phone, not in the chat room. I'm Sierra Pacific Industries District Manager for the Tahoe District, manage the company's timberland in Nevada, Sierra, Yuba, and Placer counties.
Great, thanks, Eric. Do you have a favorite tree?
So, balsam fir.
Balsam fir, good one. All right, anyone else on the phone?
Allison,
all right.
Obviously
yeah.
I'm not on the phone, but I did just want to take a second to introduce Melinda Booth, our Executive Director at Circle, who's also on the call today, and just make sure that thank her for all of her support in getting us here.
Thanks, Andrew. I hope to join you guys shortly on video, and I don't have the chat box at this time, but I wanted to say hello and thanks everybody for joining us. And my favorite local tree is probably the madrone, and worldwide, I'm going to go with the rainbow eucalyptus.
Ooh, that is a good one. All right, anyone else on the phone? Otherwise, we will move on. All right, so everyone keep adding your introductions to the chat box below, or right now. And while you're doing that, I'll just go over a couple quick housekeeping tips. I think most everyone is probably fairly familiar with the Zoom platform, but just in case, we'll let you know. Let's see, number one, today's meeting is being recorded. So we will share the recording out on the email list afterwards. So you can share it with your colleagues or you can refer back to it later. Just so you know that's going on. Let's see, next, everyone's doing a great job of muting yourself. So please continue to do so if you're not speaking. That just makes for more productive meeting here. Let's see. And then if your internet connection allows it, I think most people are, but we'd love it for you to turn on your video. Part of the point of today is to meet each other and interact, and that's a lot easier easier and more engaging if we can see each other. And then the chat box, I think you all found the chat box already, it looks like, down at the bottom of your screen. And throughout the meeting, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in there in the chat box, and we will try to get to them as time allows. If we don't get to the question today, we'll be saving everything that's typed in the chat box. We'll go through and answer all those questions and include responses in our follow-up email. And then I would just like to take a quick moment to recognize that in this new virtual world that we're in, there's an ever more important need to be flexible. So feel free to take a break, get some water, stretch, speak up if you need anything. Know that we're all in this weird world together. So we are doing the best we can. And thanks for being here. And then just the last housekeeping thing, we are going, later on today, we're going to be using Zoom's breakout room function to break you into smaller groups and allow for more conversation. So we'll go over the logistics of that when we get to that point, but just know that we will be asking everyone to participate. So try not to do too much multitasking during today's meeting. I know it's tempting, but the more engaged everyone is, the more productive we can be. So I think that's it for my housekeeping tips. And with that, I will hand it off to Andrew to give us a little more background on this Yuba Forest Network project and what has gotten us to this point today. Andrew.
Great, I'm just gonna unmute myself and start sharing my screen here. Thank you all so much for joining, and thank you, Allison, for that great intro. So this stakeholder assessment that we sent out a report on this morning, we really encourage you to take a look at. It's got a lot of great information, a little bit of background, which I'm sure many of you already know and do not need. However, just to set create the context there. But we are diving into this to really try and figure out where the need is. This isn't a top-down structure of Allison and I trying to impose ourselves. While Allison is from here and has lived in the Bear and Yuba watersheds almost her entire life, I am not. And I am still learning this place very much so, and have years of learning ahead of me. And so we really encourage any feedback in the coming weeks and months as we move forward. And today, this initial stake needs assessment is just to really start to figure out where are the gaps that aren't being covered, and just recognize all of the other organizations doing such great work already. And this is a network. It isn't necessarily a collaborative working group. It could become that, but we want to leave that open. And so with that, I would just like to start with a little bit of a land acknowledgement and the history here. Circle works within the Yuba watershed on the ancestral homelands of the Nisenan, Washoe, Concow, and Mountain Maidu peoples. And we acknowledge the painful history of genocide and the loss of lands and waters that have been irreversibly altered. These communities are still very much here today. And thank you so much for joining us. And Circle is grateful to have opportunities to partner with tribes in our work throughout the watershed. And so with that, just talking about the scale that we're working on here, and trying to conceive of 1,300 square miles across 4 different counties, 5 different counties, and an incredible elevation gradient, and then also just an incredible diversity of forests. And with that, our watershed is made up of old growth conifer, early seral stage forests, hardwood forests, dense chaparral, foothill woodlands, and other mixed conifer types. And all of these forests have been impacted by fire at some point. And we know for so many of us, we know too well what that has meant today, and looking back on the history of a fire adapted ecosystem and what it means to go forward, how to live safely while also having a thriving ecosystem around us. So with that, I just wanted to go into a few of the major challenges for our area. And I would say that this network really has the potential to address one of those huge challenges, which is land ownership. And the absolute sort of shotgun blast of a map that we're looking at in terms of property ownership, sporadically placed across the map. And I think you can see here that the Forest Service actually has Plumas and Tahoe National Forests make up about 50% of the watershed. And with that, we also have a number of other land management agencies. So the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, the Department of Defense, California State Parks, and then we have this massive of private lands that are often subdivided over and over and over again. And so that creates just so many challenges, and this checkerboard is going to need a unique approach. And I think so many organizations have already faced this and will continue to. And so with that, I think just to call out our restoration challenges and the base for why we're doing this, and why the Department of Conservation is trying to emphasize greater watershed coordination, is to start that unique land ownership patterns. The second is the high percentage of wildland urban interface. Every community, every town and within our watershed almost, for the exception of some of those in the lower Yuba, are either high or very high potential high severity wildfire zones according to CAL FIRE. And with that, climate change is only going to exacerbate and continue to increase the potential for high severity wildfire and pose risks. We also have a number of considerations related to mining activity and recent land development. And that ranges from water quality in the Yuba River that could be severely impacted, and already is, by sediment, rising temperatures, aged water infrastructure, and mercury contamination. And then finally, the one that we all know especially is fire suppression has led to a significant departure from historic fire return intervals. And I just have to say, as a environmental organization, I think returning fire to the landscape is certainly a priority of ours. But we know that not everyone is comfortable in that approach. And so we'll address that a little bit later on. And there are certain realities to that as well. So with that, I'd just like to dive into our preliminary goals. And when Allison and I, over these last couple months, really dove in here and tried to imagine what this could look like, what does it mean to be a network and to not be necessarily like an impositional project developer. We wanted to create a consolidated data platform, and not just data, but also a calendar of forest health related events, tying together so many of the other organizations that are doing great work here. So bringing together those fire safe councils, bringing together across 3 different counties, bringing together and also adding on the coalition of Nevada County Firewise communities, as well as the North Yuba Forest Partnership, the Yuba Bear Burn Cooperative, and then so many of these YWIs, several projects. So the Yuba Watershed Institute, thanks so much for joining us today, Chris. Is doing fantastic work across Inman Forest, Round Mountain, and Little Deer Creek. And so I think there are a number of these events, and also figuring out how to get those projects down on a map. And so that's what this platform could really offer, as well as resource sharing. And then a second major goal of ours is to support the existing institutions and promote a little more cross-boundary collaboration. And if that means really just joining on to certain pieces, or trying to find ways to fundraise for that as a group, to sort of limit the intra-regional competition. There are finite resources for wildfire dollars, and so I think that's something that we absolutely face. And then finally, to increase our regional identity around Yuba forests. And I don't want to be a marketer and sound like a branding campaign too much, but I think it's really important. And we've seen other groups throughout the Sierras, for example, the Sierra Meadows Partnership, that have been able to create a really meaningful identity and has led to this thriving partnership over the years. And so with that, I'd like to pass it back to Allison and see if she can add on to anything I said, and then also move on in the agenda. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks so much for attending.
Great, thanks, Andrew. That was fantastic. So now that you're all primed, we are going to break into smaller groups for a few minutes to get a little more engagement going, get the blood flowing, right? So for those of you who may not have used Zoom's breakout room function yet, basically I need to go in and click a couple buttons, and then everyone will be randomly sorted into groups of 4. You will be automatically sent to your virtual room. I think there might be one button you need to click, but you should go there automatically, and then we'll send you there for 15 minutes for this round, and then you should be automatically brought back to the main group. So what we'd like you to do once you're in your room with your new group is to introduce yourself briefly, and then go around and answer these 2 questions for us. First, what is a current forest health related project that you are working on, if you have one, and what is the biggest challenge you face with that project? So go around, talk about your current projects and challenges, and if your group has time, we'd love for you to answer the second question, which is, what is a dream project that you have for the region? If you had all the resources and connections that you needed to put together your dream project, what would that look like? So that being said, I will break you into groups. Does anyone have any questions before we do that? Was that clear as mud?
Allison, if I could just jump
Yeah.
in, for each of these
course.
groups, we're not going to be able to be there for all of them.
Yeah.
And so if maybe you could start off by nominating one person to just take a few notes, that would be so helpful for us in capturing some of that discussion.
Yeah, because we will have time at the end. We're going to do 2 separate breakout group sessions, and we have time at the end where we'd like to come back and have a big group discussion about what people are talking about. So yeah, great point, Andrew. Have a point and note taker. Yes, all right, give me just 20 seconds to get you guys there, but if that all sounds good, we will see you in about 15 minutes. All right, it looks like I think everyone has made it back to the main room here. So welcome back. I hope that worked well enough, and I hope you got to meet some new faces or reconnect with familiar ones, and learn a bit more about other projects that are going on in our watershed. So I think next up we have Andrew will give us another quick presentation, but until I don't see him here. Are you here, Andrew? Okay, so until Andrew pops back in. Oh, you're ready?
I'm ready
okay.
to go. Thanks so much.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, so then for the sake of time, we will hold on to your thoughts right now, and we will open the floor up later after a second breakout room session. And we can discuss some of these issues as a group. So take the floor, Andrew. This is, yeah, go for it.
Great. Can everyone see it again? Yeah, excellent. So as Allison and I have mentioned, we conducted a needs assessment these last few months. We sent out a survey in May, I think, and we gave about a little over a month to get those back. I know some folks didn't quite get a chance, but we had relatively great representation, I think, and great participation. We also met with a number of groups since we started, and that some of it was a little more informal, some of it was formal. And those meetings have really informed sort of this, that certainly informed this needs assessment. And so with that, to dive in, we initially sent out about 122 individual surveys. And we received, the response rate was 36%. I think we were shooting probably for closer to 50, and if folks would still like to take it, it would definitely be skewed considering you've heard so many answers, but we'd still like to hear from you in some capacity. But to get an idea of the respondents and probably an idea of who's on this call today, we asked the question, who are you representing? And nonprofits made up the overwhelming majority with 41%. And then followed closely by county and local agencies, as well as private businesses. And so, and then we just had a number of others, state agencies, education, federal agencies. We had a few schools, I think, reach out to us, and education and research entities, and then also a few different tribes. So with that, our next question was really, what are your greatest priorities in forest health work? And we were blown away. We had originally put forth 9 categories. We received another, I think, 10 to 15. We certainly realized there would be some oversight, but with that, Allison really divided it up into 4 new categories in addition, because we found multiple results. So it ended up with 13 distinct priorities, and it's really incredible. Obviously, there's some overlap here, but those standouts were water quality, biodiversity, public safety, wildlife habitat, and sustainable economies, and then finally carbon sequestration to really make up that top 80%. And I think this is going to be a driving factor moving forward, and I'll address this a little bit in the recommendations in a moment here. But we can start to think about how this will lead the trajectory of this group and those priorities. So Similarly, we asked, what is your primary reason for participating? And information sharing, which we had anticipated to some extent and was a major ask of the Department of Conservation, actually turned out to be #1, so that was great. And then to guide the development of a regional forest health strategy, and then to also develop new projects, which I think was probably pretty obvious, but we just wanted to confirm. And this question is distinct from the next question, which was actually folks' research need or resource needs. And so you can dive a little bit deeper in the report. We did a brief write-up for each of these, but oh, sorry about that. Just to continue to go through quickly so that we can really set the stage for this next conversation as well. We asked, what resource would be the most useful in increasing the pace and scale of forest restoration work for your organization? And I think we came away wishing we had a bank, wishing that we had a massive pile of money. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But we think that we can probably be of service, Allison and I, and then hopefully this group, for a lot of the other needs. That's not to say that we're walking away from fundraising opportunities, but I think we all know as individual organizations how difficult it really is, and will be in the coming years with the limited state budget, in light of everything that is happening. And then probably one of our most robust questions, and this is to gauge where, and give you an idea of some of the others here today, about all of the different treatments and what forms they take. And some of those are more controversial than others. And you can see on the x-axis, we're looking at what the treatment type is. And then on the y-axis, it's actually the number of participants per an answer. And so those different colors indicate 1, opposition to, and 5, in support of. And the major takeaway here is we all love prescribed fire and we all love hand thinning. And I think we could also say, however, unfortunately, prescribed fire and hand thinning are probably 2 of the greatest areas that could use expansion as well, and maybe have been limited due to weather factors for prescribed fire, as well air quality and just the seasonality that recent seasons and the challenges that have been lent towards us. And then one piece that I just wanted to touch on as well was that we had a number of folks who reached out to us and indicated that they were unclear on the definitions of even-aged and uneven-aged saw log harvest. And I think one of the goals for us is to actually continue to increase vocabulary and literacy around forest health. And so I just wanted to run through those definitions really quick. And according to the U.S. Forest Service's reforestation glossary, even-aged forest management is defined as a planned sequence of treatments designed to maintain and regenerate a stand with predominantly one age class. And then uneven-aged management is the regeneration and maintenance of stands with a multi-age structure by removing some trees in smaller classes, or across different classes, excuse me. And so with this, I think this is a really revealing question, and will also sort of pave the road ahead in a way. Hopefully we're not paving roads, but yes. So I did want to close out before we open it up to more discussion and eventually announcements, but these were our major takeaways and recommendations. And so we had also asked the question of how frequently are people available or interested in meeting, and we had actually thought this could be an annual summit. We didn't realize, however, I think we received almost 60% in favor of holding quarterly general meetings that focus on information sharing and networking. And so that's how we envision this going forward. Again, to go back to that representation piece and priorities, there was such a wide range that we may have to break into some smaller groups that focus on maybe specific issues, resources, or subregions. And these don't have to be permanent standing meetings. They could be one-time specific issues, or some piece of this network, or piece of the platform that we're trying to build, and helping us to really make a more robust, useful tool there. And then our third major suggestion was to develop collaborative resources. And this sort of overlaps with what I just said, but in addition to that information hub, we've been working with Nevada County and some of the organizations on this phone on a stakeholder mapping tool. And we've had some tremendous difficulties just based off of the data, but are based on the state of data that we've received. But I think we could make a more streamlined process going forward, and would love some additional help if any organizations have the capacity. And then finally, I think a regional forest health strategy, and that could take the form of a mission statement, a guiding mission statement for this body. And this just circles all the way back to the fact that Allison and I don't want to be the ones who are dictating that, and hopefully it can come from a group effort. So with that, that's the needs assessment, and we hope you can dive deeper, or that our report that we sent out has everything you need in it. Yeah. So back to you, Allison.
Great, thanks, Andrew. That was great. And yeah, everyone, please do take a look at the report. We did finally get it together and send it out this morning. So that should contain a lot more information. But for now, based on Andrew's quick report out on it, we would like to give you a chance to discuss the preliminary results and the recommendations that we've come up with. So I'm gonna divide you back up into breakout rooms, new faces this time, another random assignment. So yeah, I'll tell you your prompt now. I'll try to put it in, I think I can put it in the chat box. I think I figured that out last time. I'm not sure, but
hey, Allison?
Yes, who is this?
This is Paul Rowan, sorry.
Oh, hi, Paul, yeah.
Serious technical difficulty, sorry about that. I just wanted to jump in before you guys go to the chat room again.
Absolutely, yeah.
I just wanted to comment a little on what Andrew had to say. You know, I appreciate the fact that everybody, you know, concedes that handwork and prescribed fires feels the best, but you know, I would love to get, when we go out on a show me trip, I'd love to bring you guys over to Sierra Valley and show you some of the work we're doing mastication wise, and how it can be completed without environmental degradation, and some of those things that I'd like people to understand, that there are more than one way to do things. And you know, and just before we jump off of this, I just want everybody to be aware of that. And the county, and on behalf of the county, you know, I couldn't comment earlier, I couldn't get on, so we're supporting the Yuba project, which is a couple 100-acre fuels reduction project right around the campus there, San Francisco campus. And then the Green Acres project, we got a planning grant in conjunction with the Forest Service to try to do a 1,200-acre project there to get this thing kicked off. So I just wanted to throw those things out there real quick. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us. For those who don't know, Paul Rowan is a supervisor of Sierra County, and I think one of Allison and I would love to do field tours at some point. And so when that's a possibility again, we hope to coordinate that. And I know that's something that SSI and YWI have done in the past. So we'd love to collaborate together. And it's great to have a new partner there with Sierra County. So
yeah, well, and I'm doing a 300-acre project over here right now, right on the east slope of the Yuba. And I would love to show you guys what it can look like.
Oh, it's Lori Oberholzer. I'm here too.
Hi, Lori.
I'm sitting in downtown Sierra City.
Nice. All right, so that was kind of a great introduction, Paul, to what we'd like to discuss in this next set of breakout rooms. So we just like you to talk about, were you surprised by any of the results we presented, the results of this needs assessment? Did anything really stand out to you, or is there anything missing? you know, did we miss something? Well, I'll leave it at that. That's enough questions for now. Were you surprised by the results? And did anything stand out? So I will break you up into the rooms again. I think we're going to give you 10 minutes this time, so a little shorter than last time. And then when we come back, we'll have time to open it up to group discussion to talk about anything that's come up in both of these breakout room sessions. So, okay, great. So it looks like everyone's back, I believe. So now I'd like to take maybe about 10 minutes or so just to open the floor to discuss anything that came up in either of these breakout sessions just now. What were you guys talking about? What I think Paul already kind of started us off talking about some of the results and recommendations we had. So if there's anyone who's itching to say something, go ahead and unmute yourself. And let's get some conversation started.
So this is Lon. I'm the district ranger in the Yuba River Ranger District, and we had an interesting discussion in our breakout on what it meant on about even age stand management. And I realized that there's probably, people have very different opinions about what that means and how that question applied to the situation they were looking at. And, so for me to explain it from the Tahoe National Forest viewpoint on the federal land that we have, even age stands are really a legacy that we have to deal with. Typically, they were planted after a wildfire event. On the current Trapper project, for example, we have several thousand acres of plantations. And my challenge as a land manager is those were tended to be, of course, they're even age because they were all planted at the same time. They tend to be a monoculture. They tend to be all the same species of trees. And the risk from a forest health and resiliency perspective, when I'm trying to restore that landscape to historic range of variability pre-1849, is those stands are just hugely susceptible to fire and to insect and disease unless they're intensely managed, which is not something we really traditionally have the capability to do anymore. What my goals for management of those stands are is to try and restore those historic gaps and openings, the variable density within a stand, try and introduce new species into the stand. What else am I trying to do there? Basically changing the age of the stand as well. But it's not an easy practice to do something in, say, a human lifespan that really took nature, centuries to take care of. But it's absolutely essential that, I manage those proactively, not for the sake of harvesting, but to restore it to something that's more resilient.
Yeah, thanks, Lon. One of the things we talked about in our group was defining terms, very similar to what you're coming up with and how they're used in different ways by different folks, and that the network would be a great place, and maybe your document, to put some of those term definitions together so that people can read, respond, reflect on those different meanings. Similar to what you said when we started, Allison, about, forest health and anything that contributes to forest health. And I wonder what that means to everyone. What is the anything, that could be in that category? And I feel like this is such a powerful beginning to our network. And I would like to spend some time defining forest health and hearing from everybody about what they think that includes. And maybe having some information repository come together like that.
This is Chris with the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. When we're discussing whether these results were surprises or not, as it was pointed out, was, depends on who you're asking. So if you were to ask the general public, how you feel about prescribed burning, probably get a little different answer than you got from the people that responded here. But the other thing is that, these questions were asked broadly without relating to land ownership. So I think responses on what preferences would be different if you're talking about public land versus private land. you know, and small private versus large private. And also, I think we need to, you know, really start breaking this down into ownership segments as far as what people's preferences and expectations would be.
I can go. I took notes for our group. Are we keeping on going here? This is Jamie from Sierra Forest Legacy. We had kind of a pretty cool mixed group from people actually implementing projects to county official and trails person, so kind of broad-ranging conversation. But let's see, current projects, people are working on all kinds of stuff. We talked a little bit about how popular the watershed is for recreation and how some of these trails projects could be better integrated with forest health projects so that trails are actually creating fuel breaks, you know, and creating areas that we could do things like light prescribed fires from or manage fires in the future. One tool I think that we talked about a little bit that the Tahoe National Forest is working on is this managing naturally ignited wildfires under certain conditions and where it's safe. And something that the forest is working on now, but one we'd like to just add to the list here that was discussed. And as far as the discussion on the different tools and the results, I don't think folks were super surprised. I think rather than being, you know, for or against a certain tool, just, you know, outright or ideologically, I think for almost anyone, it's going to depend on, you know, what's the site, what are we doing, what's the purpose, you know, because I mean, speaking from the perspective of an environmental group, you know, we're not opposed to outright to any of these tools necessarily. It's just it's a discussion of what wildlife habitat are we looking for? What are we trying to restore a meadow, or are we trying to thin an overstocked stand? So, you know, it just it depends, and I wouldn't take the results to mean outright support or, you know, opposition to any of the tools. And then the rest of our group, I think, we talked a bit about just the economics of it. You know, what does it cost to prescribe burn? What's the pros of masticating versus something else? You know, how many acres can you burn in a day? That sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot of information sharing and benefit to this group that can exist. Oh, and one more thing. I at least in the first question about dream projects, I think it's really cool. Kudos to you guys for getting this whole group together, and I'm really bummed to not get to do it in person because so many good people are on this Zoom call. But I think there's a lot that we can emulate from Northwestern California, and specifically from Trinity and whatever counties there are there on the Klamath River, where through the Klamath Restoration Partnership and then the tribes up there and the Forest Service, there's just a lot of good collaborative work that's been built, and I think we have a similarly robust and really smart group of people up here in the Yuba watershed, and we could certainly do something similar. So it's awesome to have Circle, you guys kind of leading the way on it.
This is Chris Friedel from the YWI. I was in a small group with Craig Marcus from Enterprise Rancheria, but we both were interested in this idea of one of the recommendations being, you know, this is such a large group over like a large geographic area. And what we're kind of hearing from you guys is that this question of like, well, what is this larger group for? Because it's kind of hard to drill down into specific areas or geographic regions or even specific projects with such a large number of stakeholders. And so one of the recommendations you guys had was to establish subgroups. And we were both curious about what level of support you envision yourself, Allison, and Andrew lending to that process. Because obviously we have you guys right now as coordinators, and for another more than a year, I think, and maybe even longer. And it just, I know, you know, as someone who runs a really small organization, it's often hard to find the time or the capacity to kind of think outside of all the projects that we already have going on. And so, yeah, we're just wondering kind of what level of support you guys could provide to the development of subgroups and management and organization of subgroups.
Good question, Chris. Yeah, I think absolutely we can at least get these subgroups started. I mean, ideally, I totally get your point on capacity. We would love if someone is interested, though, in having others take on kind of running these subgroups, so it's not just us. Because that's not the point of us being here, like controlling everything. We just want to get things started and get that ball rolling. So, yeah, we're happy to like I said, get it started and take it as far as it needs to go.
And Chris, I'll just say that it's kind of dependent on what other resources we can bring to the area. Just last week, I applied for an AIM. It's the AIM program. I can't remember but it was actually, we asked for funding for this group specifically and tried not to attach too many strings to it. So just to see, and that would actually be somewhat of an operating budget that would be really great to have, whether that's for the data platform and to bring on some extra folks or facilitator, some other options. So we'll see. I mean, it's a dream, but we're definitely prioritizing this and writing whether it's writing grants or seeking other funding sources that could help this group.
Great. Well, if there's no other discussion right now, I would like to take a few minutes to, we have an open floor, I guess, reopen the floor for announcements. This is something we talked about we'd like to do at these quarterly stakeholder meetings. It'll probably be toward the beginning at future meetings. But right now, if anyone has announcements of events coming up or anything you'd like to share with the group, the floor is yours to let us know. And if not, that's fine too.
I have a sort of self-serving announcement.
Sure.
So this is Simone Albuquerque. I'm part of a master's thesis group, and we're working on a project prioritizing fuel management in areas that would have impact for water quality, specific habitats and reservoirs. And so we're gathering information from land managers and water managers in the region to better understand what are priorities that we can integrate into our data organization. And so if anybody would be interested in a short, casual 10 to 30 minute interview that can inform a year-long project in the watershed, that would be amazing. And yeah, and you can group chat me if you're interested or get my information from Andrew Salmon.
Hey, Simone, could you just drop your email maybe in the chat box?
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Simone, you can also, and anyone else with announcements, you can send an email to us also, and we can include that in the notes. Or if we get enough, maybe a separate email. See.
This is Julie
Anyone
Fair.
else? Yeah.
This is Julie Fair. I just was going to clarify that American Rivers is working with Simone and the group of grad students, and their geographic scope is the Cabby region. So it'll include the Yuba, and we know that there's quite a bit of prioritization already being done there. So our idea is to incorporate what's being done and then really put an angle on it, looking at benefits for rivers and water quality as kind of a new piece.
Thanks for that, Julie.
All right, if there are no other announcements, then we will move on. Just to wrapping up today, I hope this has been informative so far. We're always open to feedback, so please let us know if you have comments or suggestions or anything. We're really excited to see all this energy around forest health here in this virtual room, but also like actively happening across the watershed. So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for the work that you do. This is great. So we have, it looks like about 9 more minutes left today. So we'd like to take the time to come up with some meaningful next steps to move this project forward in supporting your projects. So, and feel free, anyone, to chime in here as we kind of go through these. And we'll send this out in a follow-up email also, these next steps. So, but so far I have, well, first on my list is Andrew and I will send a follow-up email to this call. That's our next step. And that'll contain video recording, notes, next step list, and we'll send out a schedule of the future quarterly meetings. And so if you have notes from your breakout room sessions too that you'd like us to incorporate, please send them our way. We'd love to add that to the notes. So, and then like we've talked about, really to make some progress on specific tasks between the quarterly meetings, we'd like to establish a few subgroups or small working groups that are really focused on these specific interest areas. So yeah, we did kind of talk about this. We don't want to be creating more meetings, more meetings to just have more meetings. So we'd like to keep these really, fairly specific task-oriented working groups. And we have a couple ideas we've come up with so far. We've heard some ideas out today. And maybe I'll send out a list and people can sign up. How does that sound? If you're interested, we have, yeah, I can go over the list real quick right now. But I think we've heard, let's see, we heard about, yeah, kind of defining terms and defining forest health. And I think that fits in well with what Andrew mentioned earlier about creating a mission statement and kind of forming a regional strategy. So we'll call that kind of a strategy working group, for lack of a better term. And then I think another next step is we'd like to set up a website and that information hub that can host all the information we'd like to share with you. So if there's anyone who is particularly interested or skilled in website design, please reach out to me. I can do a little bit, but I can't do it alone. So I'd love to work with you on that. Anything else that pops out to anyone right now as far as a specific task to get working on?
Allison, I just wanted to jump in and Sue Britting from Sierra Forest Legacy had some great comments in the chat box. Sue, I don't want to steal your glory here. If you wanted to share those with us, though, it would be great to hear them.
Okay, let's see. One thought I had was that it would be good to create a listserv, and that would allow people to exchange information. And so whatever, it just could be a Google list that's Yuba network or whatever you want to call it. And then two things happen when that happens. It actually creates the list, but then if you never get rid of those emails, it actually creates an archive without ever doing anything, right? Every email just gets archived somewhere. That would be one thing. The other thing is, even if you didn't want to do a website for information, you could create a Google Drive that we dedicate to our use. And that it's just the tools that people could have to help with sharing. And I'm sorry, Andrew, I don't remember. Were there other things I said? I typed, I forgot.
I think the listserv was great, and then you also had said a little bit earlier, just talking about the networking hub and what our website could become. And I think I posted just the page. It's yubariver.org/foresthealth, with a dash in Forest Health. But we're going to build off of that website, and we'll definitely be posting. It's not quite ready, but we'll try and get that up and running within the next 2 weeks here.
That'd be great. You know, one thing that this is just thinking a little bit more. I mentioned it in our breakout group that this network could be very helpful for helping to get projects we're working on or interested funded, because so many of the funding opportunities are about collaborative efforts and about cross-organizational work. And so that's, you know, support spans from, you know, a couple of organizations actually designing and working on a project together to then seeking support, letters of support or volunteer support from other organizations. So if that website could somehow relate people's projects, either geographically or thematically or something, that might help people learn more about how to link up with others who are doing things. And, you know, maybe it even extends to just expanding volunteer opportunities for some of the local NGOs. Maybe some of the local NGOs are looking for ways to get their members and volunteers out to do work and to do, you know, restoration work. And that might be a interesting hub there as a way of boosting capacity as well as support.
And Sue, the Sierra Meadows partnership has done exactly that. They created I think they call it a meaningful seal of, like a meaningful seal of approval or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely a vision that we had. We didn't want to project that, but I'm so glad that you said it.
This is Sandy Jacks. I'm from our California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I was thinking, like, what role could I, you know, how could I provide help to this group? And so maybe other people have that same thought. So if there was a way that if people are comfortable in the listserv or spreadsheet or whatever you develop, there could be a section that we could fill in, like, what can I provide? Like, I have a ton of regulatory experience and reviewing documents and providing recommendations, understanding our law on the state level. And so maybe, you know, I might not be as helpful in the beginning part of designing a project, but, you know, coming along midway or towards the end and helping understand if the project, you know, looks like it's a sound project in the, you know, from that perspective. So anyway, maybe if we each had our own little column that we could say, what can we bring to the group? That way, when people are looking for that advice or that leadership or anything, they could go to the spreadsheet and see who has that skill set. Maybe there's great grant writers or people that are really skilled at doing botany surveys that could be very helpful in a lot of ways. So anyway, I just thought maybe if that doesn't breach too many privacy issues and stuff, just an idea to put out there.
Yeah, I think I just want to jump on and say, yes, this is the age of networks. And the Sierra Nevada, our region, you know, we drive so far to see each other, and it takes all day, and we do one meeting. And I really think that this is an amazing opportunity for us to meet more frequently with less personal time, energy, and carbon emissions, and do some of this really like powerful networking and coordination. And I also want to echo the Sierra Meadows Clearinghouse. That has been a really successful model. It takes time, but it's really worth it. We have a similar model for hydraulic mine sites, our headwater mercury source reduction strategy. And it's all about increasing pace and scale, coordination, and networking so that we can do more better together. And I'm just so grateful. My dream project and in our groups was this network. This network is the dream project that we need for our region to get more of this work going forward. And just thanks for holding it. And let's make the network all it can be with great idea of listing out skills and using Google Docs, simple platforms with contact lists. Like, I think that this is so very, very needed. And we're doing it in part because we can Zoom it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Carrie. That's maybe, unless anyone has anything else burning, that's a great note to end our meeting today on. We want to be conscious of your time here. And Sandy, I just want to follow up to your idea. It's great too. I think we started with an idea of a directory of organizations, but yeah, I think maybe a voluntary directory of individuals and their skills. That's a great idea. So, yeah. Well, I guess we'll just wrap up real quick. Andrew, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, just one last comment. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I would love to add that if you have a project that you would like included in the final draft, we could definitely take those and we could put them in there. I'm thinking just a paragraph or two and a map would be phenomenal if you have any literature on your projects that you're doing, because we do want to promote those and not have us all working in silos. So, and please feel free to reach out at any time. Our contact information is in the report, and we'll probably send it out again. So I'm sure you have it, but we'd love to have some phone calls in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, once again, thank you all so much for being here today. I hope this was useful and inspiring, and we're really excited to get this project going and support your projects and move more forward. So that does wrap up our meeting for today. Andrew and I will stay on the line for maybe another 10 minutes or so. So feel free to stay and chat if you like. But otherwise, thank you everyone for being here. And we will be in touch very soon, and we will see you next time. Thanks.